Right. So I want to start off and put you all in the hot seat. Presumably, you got your ice cube trays or and the zinc and the copper and those sorts of things. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. What have you learned about the law of three that you didn't know before? That's a really, really big question, but this is the way to approach the work, isn't it? Hmm.
Well, with the experiment, hang on,
Yeah.
just adjusting the sound.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Depending on what the solution is, as in the liquid,
Yep.
depending on what result you got on the multimeter. So, not sure if the liquid is representing the third vector, or if
Yeah.
it's influencing, or if it's representing a change in either the positive or the negative.
Right.
Because all three of those are changing what's in the positive and negative, or how it's being expressed through the third vector.
Yeah.
Was a different result. So we were still trying to work out.
Okay.
The inkling is that it's the third vector. Yeah. And the other thing that we found is that if you put vinegar in, white vinegar,
Huh?
it is not a good idea to try to fizz it up, because after a while it was almost as if it was feeding back, and we felt it rough. Yeah. Afterwards.
Huh. Well, which hand
And
did you try?
both.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And we also did both at the same time. So charging up the using, well, no, we did both, didn't we? To put gold as going in as the pos, and silver as the neg, and then swapping it around. And it did affect the reading on the meter.
Yeah, not
But
surprised.
after a while, we felt yeah.
Uh,
But that was only through vinegar.
so,
That
um, couple
it
things.
came back.
Couple things with this.
Yeah.
Uh, you have two neutral vectors when you're trying to do it that way.
Okay.
In other words, you've created a second triad, just like if you attach a light bulb to it, or those sorts of things. Then you've got a triad of the positive, negative, like the what is it, germanium arsenide or something like that in an LED being the neutral vector. Yeah.
Mm.
And then you get light, right? And then light goes out into the atmosphere, hits an object, and it's neutral, like the wall, for example, or a chalkboard. You see, it becomes negative to it, yeah, and it becomes heat. And so you have this triad upon triad upon triad upon triad, and you see it just keeps going, just keeps going. Yeah,
Right.
heat is vibration, isn't it? Right. And so you've got vinegar and water, copper and zinc, and a light bulb, right? And you can
Yep.
see, you can count 7 triads out about how it manifests and changes.
Yeah, we haven't done it with a light bulb yet. We've
Yeah,
only
okay.
been doing it with the multimeters.
How many volts are you getting?
Oh, blimey, was it 6?
Okay.
Yeah. I'm having to think of memory, because we're down at Sam's place.
Yeah. No worries.
Did you bring it?
No, I didn't.
No, did I? Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about the neutral. What you don't travel with your ice cube tray and your don't leave home without it, right?
I did ask for it to be packed, but it didn't happen. It didn't occur to us.
we're going to Hawaii, right? I need my ice cube tray and my copper. Yeah, let's talk about the neutral vector for a minute, because I have something on the the to-do. Yeah, and Mark, both you and Ion prodded me to give the lesson on general habitual living, yeah, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
But let's start more fundamental than that, because
Okay.
if you think of the water, I mean, obviously, we start from the beginning, right? If you get I don't know where my strips are at the moment. If you get some copper, do you recall if this was positive or negative? Yeah, if you reverse the leads on the multimeter, it will show upside down. You see, or backwards.
Yeah, you get a minus. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Anyway, just a piece of copper. Is it going to light a light bulb?
No.
Just sitting there,
Not by
right? Or an
itself.
LED. Yeah, not by itself. Now, by the way, if you do get a light bulb or LED, make sure it's a very low voltage one, obviously. The LED, there is a so because of the what they're made of, there is a certain breakdown voltage and current that needs to take place, and so you might not see it, or you might have to cup your hand around it very little bit just to see it if it's an LED. If you put a bunch of trays in parallel, you'll probably get enough current, so just keep that in mind, okay? Yeah, if I put a piece of zinc there, it's not going to light a light bulb either, is it? All right. Three forces. We've said this about the law of three. This is one of the fundamental knowing or ideas, concepts of the law of three, is that the three things have to be together at the same time in the same place for something to manifest. Now, if you, and Ion, you can probably do this, but if you take, Sam, you'll know the answer to this, I think. If you take degassed and distilled, purified, just H2O, right? Nothing, no minerals or anything else or gases in it whatsoever. Is it going to conduct?
No.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's an insulator, right? So that already says something about the nature of the neutral vector. The water might be a medium for something, but nothing can take place unless there's a particular polarity within it. And you can use an acid or a base. Yeah? I mean, try baking soda, try vinegar, and you'll see that you can get current flow when that situation is present. So what does that tell you about the neutral vector? For me, it tells me it's not so neutral.
No.
Yeah. Huh?
Yeah. It has to be. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. That the neutral vector needs to have some kind of purpose to it. Question is, has oneself put a purpose to it that's actually of use? Rather than it taken away.
Now, what happens if you put oil? I think, Ion, you did this experiment. What happens? Huh?
That's a great insulator.
Yeah, it's a good insulator. Nothing happens, right?
Right.
They sit there in potential, don't they?
Right.
All the electrons can't move. They want to move, but they can't. What does this tell you about the neutral vector? Keep going with this neutral vector thing, because it's often been said in the work that this is the part that's hardest to see. I think it's only hardest to see because it's misunderstood.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a large part of the misunderstanding of the neutral vector is that it's tended to be spoken about more from a negative point of view, not as in positive and negative, but from the point of view of, oh, you've got a loaded vector because of how you've reacted to something. And that's as far as the understanding goes.
Okay, wait, hold there. What do you
Okay.
mean by neutral vector, or what do you mean by loaded vector?
It's when you come across a situation that has happened in the past, and it triggers a reaction off where it's not in a, it's there for a purpose, and that is to actually try to ground, if you like, to remove that charging. But what will be better is, instead of focusing on all, that's a loaded factor, is how to fix it. How to make sure that both what the neutral vector is productive, and how to control what comes in on the positive and the negative, so that it doesn't require to come into play to do that outplay of whatever it is.
What do you mean, what comes in on the positive and negative vectors?
Well, how can I put this without being too politically incorrect? If you, all right, if you, in a previous group, yeah, when you've got something that's being taught that is complete bullshit, you know what I'm like, right? Okay, and you're not able to turn around and say, hang on a second, that's not quite right. It just starts to rise in you, and you get really agitated by it. So when there's a break to get a cup of tea, it can cause conversations to go on that are less inclined to how humans should interact. I'll try to not be too negative, because you know what I'm like if I do have to draw a line on something. Yeah.
All right, let me pause you there,
Pause,
please. Yeah. This interaction that Mark and I just engaged in was a living example of the law of three at work. He began by talking about the loaded vector, right? And do you remember what I said? I said, what do you mean by loaded vector? Yeah. So let's analyze this from the law of three standpoint. Here's Mark in the positive vector, trying to get some information across. Yeah. Here's me in the negative vector. I'm receptive. I'm listening. I'm trying to understand what Mark says. Now, neutral vector, if I have some sort of polarity in it, whether it be positive or negative, then I am able to actually neutralize it, right? We're able to complete the triangle, but I didn't. Okay. I mean, technically I do know what a loaded vector is, right? But I used it as an example. What's a loaded vector? In other words, my neutral in this, I wasn't able to neutralize what he was talking about. Yeah, I wasn't able to complete a triangle out of it, make it something useful for my life. So what happened? Yeah, in other words, I didn't have any vinegar or baking soda, yeah, in my neutral vector. It was just oil, or it was just a degassed purified water. You see, nothing in there to help it. And so I went positive. I said, hold on, what do you mean? That put Mark in the receptive aspect, to where he had to go, first of all, understand what part of that I likely didn't understand, dig into his resources inside, and he found something in his neutral vector that was, in this case, an example. Yeah, in a particular meeting, something is said, that sort of thing. And so he thinks Pierce will probably understand this. Yeah. So he found some charge, positive or negative, in there, went back into positive. I went negative. And now that I have the reference, I'm able to neutralize it. I'm able to when I say neutralize it, I don't mean null and void. I mean current is now flowing. The LED is lit. You see, this is what people don't understand about the neutral vector. They think it's just quashing, yeah, this kind of thing. What it really is it's the result, or the mediator, or the outcome of something. You see, and now I can take that, and now I have a bit of a charge in my neutral vector about what Mark means about a loaded vector in something. and I can do something with it in my life. Okay, now let's take another example. And I don't want to bring up the darkness of humanity, but sometimes it makes it very potent to do so. All right, you take the example of a child who is being abused by their parents, or one parent or another, whatever the case might be. Okay, and now instinctively, and because of cultural programming, they know that their parents are supposed to love them, right? And they can't reconcile that with the idea that their parents are abusing them. You see, it's two conflicting things without any sort of bias in the neutral vector here, that they can't do anything with it. And so because they're not able to neutralize it, they just keep going around and around and around. My parents love me, they beat me. Why? Yeah. And so they dope it. They dope the neutral vector. They say, well, maybe I'm just bad. Yeah. Maybe I deserve it. Right. They try to make something of that. And if they use that as if they dope it that way as their neutral vector, they could end up with a very low sense of self-esteem as they grow up. You see, right? Or they could end up with all kinds of things, right? Because it wasn't the right way to dope it. You see, but if someone comes along and says, no, it's not that you're bad, right? Here's the reason why this happens sometimes. Yeah. And they can go into the idea of things like trauma repetition, or they can go into, how people tend to repeat certain patterns in their lives that they were taught, and so on and so forth. They could give this child or this young adult a bit of a psychological education on what can go wrong in a human, yeah, in their soul psychology and their mentality, and these sorts of things that makes them act against their own nature and act against cosmic nature and inflict harm, yeah, on a child. You see, and if that neutral vector is doped in a productive way, in a way that brings in new learning, higher understanding about something, then that child can actually grow up and become a highly functional person, highly empathetic, highly understanding, and also not be one who repeats that kind of cycle. Yeah. Now, the only difference is in what information came in the neutral vector. Yeah, because without it, yeah, you get this kind of skewed idea in the neutral vector, potentially. Some won't. That is a fresh approach to the idea of general habitual living, new initiative, and new knowledge. What I mean by that is this: we go on with our lives in certain patterns. Yeah, let's say that you have a propensity to drink too much, yeah, and you drink and drink and drink and drink. Okay, not water, Hannah, but like booze. It's
Looks like water.
Don't want you to get a guilt complex there about drinking water. Yeah, but you do. Okay, this has become part of your general habitual living. 5 o'clock rolls around, open a beer, crack a whiskey, whatever the case might be. You see, day after day after day after day, it becomes part of this aspect ingrained in you. And then one day, you wake up in the morning with a bit of a hangover, and you go, this really probably isn't very good for me. Yeah, maybe I should stop. And for a little while, well, generally what happens is people start bargaining with themselves, don't they? They're like, I'll only drink on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, right? Or I'll only drink between the hours of 6 and 7, but then they like have 18 instead of, this sort of thing. Yes, right? People begin to bargain with themselves just a bit, don't they? Yeah, it's just human nature, right? But they try. And for a little while, they make progress. You see, maybe it's even for a few weeks or a few months, that sort of thing. But what happens in the long run? eventually they go right back into that old way, don't they? I mean, this is how it happens, because the neutral vector in a situation like that wasn't powerful enough, wasn't doped enough. It wasn't the appropriate neutral vector to be able to stop that. Yeah. Because it was just a matter of like, this probably isn't very good for me. I should cut down, right? Or I should quit. And then the negotiation and so on and so forth starts, right? It shows that it's not properly doped with something potent. Yeah. Might be for a little while, but it's not in the long run. It doesn't generally work. Until one day they go see the doctor. Yeah. And the doctor takes some blood work and says, "Wow, something's really off with the blood levels, showing that maybe there's something wrong with your liver. Yeah, we'd like you to come back for more tests and see. By the way, do you drink a lot? Yeah, that sort of thing. Uh, come back for more tests and realize that the liver, may only have 25% of its life left in it, which means that it could fail. Yeah, and ultimately the person could die within 6 months, a year, even 2 years, something like that. Now, imagine that kind of information coming into the neutral vector. Unless a person is a severe alcoholic, they're going to quit, probably, right? They're most likely they're going to go, "Oh shit, my life has caught up with me. I need to stop this. I need to stop this now," right? Maybe they go get treatment, whatever the case might be, to stop it. But you see the difference in potential with what comes into the neutral vector with both of these examples that I gave, yields a different outcome. Yeah. This is the idea of general habitual living, new initiative, and higher knowledge. Or maybe probably a better way to say it would be correct knowledge. Yeah. So now you can apply this sort of concept to anything that you undertake in life. You wish to be more clairvoyant, for example. Yeah. And you have the tools. We've given the tools many times about how to develop things like that. You need to go through and ask yourself a series of questions that reveal the neutral vector in you. Why? Why do I wish to become more clairvoyant? Yeah, right. It's so that I can show off at parties. I'm sensing, Yeah. What's it for? What are you going to use it for? Are you going to use it for your personal development? Are you going to use it to, like I said, show off? Yeah. Are you going to open a 1-800 toll-free line? Guru Pierce's, 995 will tell you everything about yourself, sort of thing, right? Or are you going to use it for something else? Are you going to use it for not just your personal development, but to be able to understand different essences, attendances, presences, elementals, unseen world forces that you're actually dealing with? What's going through yourself? What's going through other people? What's an environment feel like? You read the signs of the astral light around you in a place, and you begin to know what's going to happen. You brush auras with somebody, and you understand that frequency, and you're able to potentially provide some healing for them, really. The question of why is very important in a personal development journey. Are you clear in yourselves of why you're doing this work? So I know there's an aspect to it that is, I wouldn't say addictive, because an addiction implies something that is added to the life. But from the standpoint of it being more natural than probably most things that you encounter in life. In other words, we talk about the real aspects of the universe, don't we? We talk about the real aspects of creation. we talk about things like human purpose. And these sorts of things are so seldom encountered in the culture that once you get a taste for it, you can't leave it. I mean, you can leave me, it's fine, but you'll always, once you start a journey like this, you'll always be looking for the esoteric in something, because it is core to the human having a human experience on the planet. Yeah. But and now I'm going to pick on the Eamon a bit about this, because it, in the end, for most folks, became a smorgasbord. Do you know the word? A cornucopia of trivial bits of knowledge, really. You know, oh, can you tell me about the tarot? Of course I can, right? Can you tell me about? Of course I can, yeah, because I read this archive and that archive and this archive and that archive, and I've heard this lesson, had that lesson. Yeah, it's without a genuine purpose in it, it's not going to. And by when I say dope the neutral vector, I'm using an electronics term, because when they make like diodes or transistors, they use certain things to bias parts of it, to give it a better charge, right? And so they'll put some gallium in the silicone, kind of sputter it into the substrate of the silicone to give it a certain charge. And so when I say doping the neutral vector, that's the reference, okay? In case you had a neutral vector that couldn't quite understand what Pierce meant by doping. Yeah. All right. Okay, so more of a live lesson instead of the traditional approach to the general habitual living initiative and new knowledge type of lecture. And guess what? It's evident right there in your ice cube tray.
Pierce, I have a thought here. I think
I like
from
the
the
henna.
explanation.
Henna?
Oh yeah, it's henna on the
Yeah.
hand. I was at a marriage last weekend, remember? That's why I wasn't
Wow.
here.
Wonderful.
So, just thinking of the way that you described, or you kind of explained the neutral vector, it feels like the three different words come to mind that are perhaps a little bit more descriptive. It's aggregator, stabilizer, or enhancer.
Hmm.
In either of those, I don't think either of those fully describes it, because they're more than that. I did that, but any of them described it better than the neutral word.
Yeah,
Because the
sure.
neutral is saying I'm going to dampen you, where this is not
Absolutely.
dampening you. It's actually getting you the better aspects of whatever the positive and negative is, bringing them together. So that's aggregation. It's also enhancing it. It's kind of bringing them together and making them better instead of either the positive, negative.
Yeah. Good.
And it's also stabilizing it, right? So that they don't go against each other. Instead, they go together.
Yeah, I would agree. I think neutral vector is probably a terrible word. Like, they don't even use it in Christianity, do they? Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, or Holy Ghost. I don't like the word Holy Ghost. But we talked about this last week, yeah? About the I Ching, symbols of the I Ching. And unless you understand, I'm going to erase this one for a minute, unless you understand the subtleties of Taoist cosmology, which would have been the way in China, you would think that Taoism or the whole Eastern concepts that surround this are only about the law of two, only about, this either right, left, male, female, light, dark, so on. Yeah. But it's not, because they have these trigrams. This one happens to be fire in there. And they have this idea of changing. And what they do is they take coins. I don't have any coins here, but you can imagine I have 3 coins. Okay. And they try and figure out what energies are at play in a certain scenario. And so they ask a question, either verbally or mentally, take their 3 coins, or yarrow sticks if you wish, and they cast them onto the ground. And Heads means yang or positive, tails means yin or negative. And they keep casting these, okay, until they come up with what's called a hexagram, which is 6 lines. And sometimes you get 3 heads, for example, or 3 tails. We'll say 3 tails in this example at a particular line. And if you get 3 tails, that means it's a changing line. In other words, it's currently negative or has a manifestation of negative. In other words, it's doped negatively, but it's about to go the other way. Yeah. And so if this yin line here, the broken yin line, was a changing line, then it would mean that it is about to become this. Drop that chalk. Heaven, they call that heaven, because this yin line, broken line, became that one. And so then you'd have to understand, okay, well, fire is one thing, heaven is another, in these trigrams. This is about to go from one condition to another based on the neutral vector. So you see, they have the same idea, exact same idea of what's in the neutral vector. Is it positive, negative? Is it stationary at the moment? In other words, is it static? It can't be neutralized properly, or is it becoming something else? So I'm constantly fascinated by the idea that no matter which culture you look into, it's always the same thing. Yeah, whether it be Chinese, it's just different ways of looking at it. I would encourage you actually to find a trace of the way in the world. I got all kinds of things on Taoism. Yeah, it's fascinating. Same thing in like Ayurveda. Exact same thing, actually, as what we're studying now in the concept of alchemy. You'll find the same principles. Okay. Anyway, does that help? Does that help add a bit of flavor to this idea of positive, negative, and neutral? Good.
Because I want to take a little bit practical of
Yeah,
this.
please. Yeah.
Because I think,
Well, that's what it's about, isn't it?
yeah, I just wanted to kind of dive into observations and sort of way forward. Like in a situation where there is a lot of positive, or there's a lot of thoughts that are different from yours. Just forget the positive and negative is just one way of saying it. Like you have a lot of thoughts, you have a lot of things going on. You're in an environment where a lot of thoughts are different from yours. In whatever way is material in that situation. You either, I mean, how do you do there? Like, what do you do there? If it's very different to the point where it doesn't work, you just leave, you just go, or and if you try to see if there's a way for a neutral vector to come in, or do you try to create the neutral vector? Like, how do you get into a situation? Like, how do you kind of go from there? To me, it feels like it's a balance between try to introduce a neutral vector, but if it doesn't, then leave.
Sure.
It's sort of what I'm looking at. How
Well,
long is it a matter of?
let me draw an analogy from martial arts for a moment. Okay. There are martial arts that are very much about force on force. Yeah, where they one. It just depends on who's stronger, who can beat the other person, and you can find examples. I'm not going to denigrate any particular martial art in that sense. It's one approach, isn't it? But then you take things like judo or aikido or bagwajang, right, which is based on the trigrams, and you'll find that they have a bit of a different philosophy. When an attack is coming in, instead of trying to resist it, what they'll do is they'll try to flow with it, you see, and then do kind of a reversal, yeah, where you're joining that force. I used to teach martial arts, and I had a really interesting thing, right? I'd say, don't let me push you over, right? I'd have students standing just like this, whatever you do, don't let me push you over. And I'd walk up to them right here, and I'd go, but I wouldn't touch them. And they'd invariably start to fall forward because they were anticipating it, you see? And it's the same kind of principle in there. is that by blending with it, sometimes that's the right approach. In other words, you have a fire trigram. I'll just do it in red. Okay, this is fire. And its component or its opposite is water this way. Together, no, sorry, that way. Together, they literally form balance, fire and water together, right? So that's one approach, but that's only one approach. Sometimes it's okay to go force on force. It just depends on what you've detected is the appropriate response for that neutral vector. It's never going to be the same. It has to do with using intelligence about how things operate. I mean, you can't fight someone who constantly yields. Yeah, it's like trying to beat up the air. And so, is there a fight if the person can't literally can't be touched? Is empty. There's no fight. It's one person exerting themselves. And really, this actually applies so beautifully into the pentagram. We're gonna have really fun lessons today, okay? Earth. There's a style of martial art called Xingyi Chuan, Hsing space I. All right, it's based on the five elements of fire, earth, air, water, and wood. And they have what's called this destructive cycle, where fire consumes air, right, by combustion, by sucking all the air out of the room, for example. Air destroys wood. Wood is a tricky one, right? Because you can also call it metal or void, depending on which system that you're working with. But what's happening here, like wood destroys, air destroys wood either by tearing it apart or sometimes by suffocation. There's a couple different ways you can look at it. Wood destroys earth by breaking it up, and earth destroys water by absorbing it. Okay, and so you're sparring with somebody, yes, and you realize that they're attacking like fire, right? They're coming at you, constantly moving forward. Da, 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 da. Yeah. And so you determine from this detection that the best approach would be to quench it with water, not be there, right? Flow, move away. And what's going to eventually happen to them is that their fire will be exhausted. Yeah, they cannot, no one can keep up that pace for too long. And so what they become is air. I'm sorry, earth. They become earth. In other words, they're out of breath. They have to stand still. They've become rooted. They've become planted. All right. And the one then that destroys earth is wood. Okay. Wood, the roots go through and they begin to break up the stance, you see, and try to trip them up and make them continue to move. And they can't stay rooted because they've exhausted their fire. And so then, anyway, I'm not going to go through the whole theory of it, all right? But the idea is the same, is that you're using the intelligence of the laws to work towards your advantage. So to your point, Sechin, there's no one way to do it. The right way to do it is to detect the nature of the influences at play and work in harmony with the laws to best accommodate it. Yeah. I told someone this week that if someone isn't trying to win an argument, in other words, if you're in an argument with someone, if you're in conflict with someone, and you give up on the notion of trying to win, there's no longer an argument. Yeah? It's like don't be there. Yeah, it's a very, very elemental approach to it. Just the problem most of the time is with us. We're trying to win. We're trying to, win the fight. We're trying to win the combat. We're trying to, whatever the case might be. Yeah, do you understand?
I had two things. The one thing got me thinking a lot, so the second thing I forgot. Maybe I'll come back to it later.
Yeah, sure. You know, Mark, you studied martial arts, didn't you?
A little bit, yeah.
What kind was it? You struck me
It
as a Goju-Ryu kind of guy.
No, it was supposed to be Shotokan, but
It's close. Yeah.
it's Shotokan was never supposed to be for competition.
Yeah, true. Well, so it was Shotokan.
That's why it's split between Shotokan and Shotokai. But there isn't that many Shotokai clubs around in England.
Oh, it's close. I think Goju-Ryu was what I would have guessed, but yeah.
All right, yeah. No, it definitely was not Kyokushinkai. Let's put it that way.
Not Cobra Kai. Okay, anyway. You can find examples from pretty much anything, can't you? In life. But it does come down to the laws. I wasn't planning on going into the law of 5 today. I'm not even sure if most of you knew there was a law of 5. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But you've been taught this, haven't you? White, red, blue, yellow, and green. Yeah, the 5, yeah. Fizzing up things. I'm going to use a little green force or white force or whatever. But did you know that we're also talking about, well, actually, who can put the planets to this? White. What planet? I'll give you a hint by
Moon?
drawing. Huh?
Is it the moon for white?
Well, that's
the sun.
silver, because we also talk about silver and gold, don't we? Yeah, so that's silver, but we got Mercury. For red, you have Mars. Blue.
Venus.
Saturn or Neptune?
Jupiter.
Venus? Jupiter or Saturn is what I would have guessed, not Venus.
Jupiter.
Venus is, I don't know what color.
Well, let's see. For yellow,
Yellow would be Venus or Sun, one of the two.
well, Saturn.
Saturn? How's that
Yeah.
yellow? I was seeing yellow in Saturn.
I'll leave that with you. Go dope your neutral vector, yeah, and then Venus for green. Okay, so this opens up something, right? Because now you can look at something like the fourth way, which was the one that came up with this idea of the 5 centers: thinking, moving, instinctive, emotional, and sexual center. But what it was really code for is the planetary influences or planetary forces at play within you. Yeah. So if you want to know more about your moving center, for example, related to fire and related to Mars, it's the Martian influence in you. Remember, as above, so below. You have Mars in you to some degree. Might be a lopsided pentagram, but you've got some, yeah? Air, Mercury, light, buoyant. You see, even the idea of the fast-moving planet, the messenger, air being the wind that carries in the messages. Well, Venus, obviously to do with the sexual center, right? We used to even have an expression venereal disease, right? Because they thought that it was the Venus influence that caused disease in people, right? Yeah. Jupiter regulating. Interesting thing about Jupiter, if Jupiter wasn't in our solar system, we'd be constantly bombarded with all kinds of things, all kinds of asteroids, meteors, comets, all those sorts of things. It's like the vacuum cleaner, because it's so massive and has such an amazing amount of gravity, that anything coming into our solar system from the outside tends to be hoovered up in its wake, and its gravitational wake. And so it has that aspect to it. You can look at the mythology of it, and much of it. So you see, if you don't understand because you say as above, so below, if you don't understand what your instinctive center does, take a peek at Jupiter, understand what Jupiter does. You'll get a better idea of it. You see, you've heard the expression, haven't you? That to study the universe, you study yourself. And if you study yourself, you study the universe. It's how it works. It's this, what's the term? It starts with a C, and I can't locate it. Well, anyway, when things can coincide. Okay, so that's where the idea of the 5 centers really comes from. And then you talk about silver and gold, you're talking about the moon in the case of silver, and the sun in the case of gold. If you want a silver atmosphere, well, you should probably know something about the moon, huh? And what that feels like. Now, poor Eamon people have such a like, bad impression of the moon. It's the mirror at the end of our particular ray of creation. If it wasn't there, nothing could return up the ray of creation. You see, it's like a silver mirror at the end of it. Now, a good question is, who can devise an alchemical experiment to prove this to be true? Something to think about. I've got about 4 or 5 that I could demonstrate, but today I wanted to give the lesson on that aspect of the law of 3, having to do with general habitual living, initiative, and new knowledge. The other thing I want to talk about is a bit to do with the law of 7, because I'm going to give you more homework, something you can actually do with the law of 7. First of all, who can go through the notes of the solfeggio? Just a minute, this has to dry. Otherwise, it's just going to be a smeared mess. So while this dries, you know the solfeggio? Probably learned it in music class. Do, a deer, a female deer. Do. Starts with do and ends with do, doesn't it? Well, this is taking too long. Let's do it here. What's next? Do?
Ray.
Ray. Yeah. And?
Me.
Mm-hmm.
Ray, me.
And?
Fa.
Ah, yeah. And?
So.
Yep.
So.
Next. Law. Law.
No. Oh, yeah.
You forgot the law.
I did, yeah.
Then C. And then you've got another do right at the top. So do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. Now, when it comes to the ray of creation, because the solfeggio, they changed it to T later. It wasn't always T, you see. But the solfeggio is code for the ray of creation. Do you know what do stands for?
Which next, kid? Yeah.
Dominus. Dominus. It's Latin for Lord. All right. Ray. Regina. And it's actually like Regina something. It starts with a C. I don't recall exactly, but it means Queen of Heaven. R-E, Re, Regina, Queen of Heaven. Me, microcosm. In other words, the small universe, organic life on Earth specifically, the small universe, microcosm. Fa, fatum. Fatum. It means the fates. Yeah, they called the planets, like we were just talking about here. They called the planets in our solar system the fates because they had a fatal influence. In other words, a destinic influence on a person's life. Yeah, so Fa, Sol, easy one. Sun, still Sol. La, lacte, meaning milk. In other words, Milky Way. Lacte, Milky Way. Si, Sidriel, the stars. Yeah, all the stars, Sidriel. You know, sidereal astrology versus the planetary astrology. And then you've got Dominus again. Okay, so it's code. The solfeggio, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, is code for the ray of creation. And you can work out, if you forget what's what, you can work it out this way. So you've got the dark end of the ray of creation. You could say probably like the side of the moon we never see. You've got the moon. You've got the planet. You've got, well, I should probably do, let's see. Yeah, the planets for all planets, yes. And then the sun. How would you do that? I would do it as, yeah, spiral, wouldn't you? All stars. And again, you've got the upward end of creation. So there you go. If you ever forget the ray of creation, just hum a bar and you'll have it. Okay. Now, do you recall where the shocks go? Well, first of all, who can give me a really good explanation of what the heck a shock is? We've talked about it many times, haven't we?
Be a separation or an octave change, a point of octave change.
It's not quite an octave change, but a separation is correct.
A separation, right?
Yeah. The first one happens here between mi and fa. Okay. Where's the next one?
Go on. Go on.
Come on, Hannah. I know you know it.
I dropped her in.
It's just under sidereal.
Yeah, right.
Sidereal.
Sidereal, sorry.
Over this side of the Atlantic, it's sidereal.
Yeah. Sidereal, sidereal, Darth Sidious, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, that
Theo.
that goes alongside Regina is Kaylee. C-A-E-L. C-A. Kaylee.
Okay.
C-A-E-L-I.
Kaylee, right, means Queen of Heaven, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Queen of the Heavens. Yeah. Yeah. Amazing, amazing, right? So it gives you an idea of where this was coded in to humanity as a way to pass on esoteric knowledge, you know, through the childhood. Doe, a deer, a female deer, right? You've probably all had the lesson, haven't you? Like first grade or something.
Sound of music. Several times.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's good. We know where the shocks are. What are they? What is a shock?
It's almost like from the way I kind of see it is it's like an RO or a reverse osmosis. What do you call it? A membrane. It's like almost like a membrane that it's almost if you're not sized right, so to speak. If you're a round peg, you're not going to go through that square hole or the triangular hole to get up to the next. That's the way I've always perceived the shocks. It's almost like a filtration system, but not really a filtration system, but it is similar to, in the way I perceive it, it's like an RO system or reverse osmosis or
it's like a barrier, isn't it?
Yeah, very much, right.
I would call it a place in an octave where the force becomes retarded. Okay. I don't mean that in the children's colloquial sense. I mean it in the slowing down or the inability to progress normally. Now, this is your homework. All right. And you're going to need a few things for it. I try and keep this inexpensive and simple as possible. All right. But this is a great way to do it. Get a 2x4, or I think in the UK they call it CLR. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Plank of wood.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah?
We still call it 2x4, even
Okay.
if it is measured in French.
Well, like I said before, you know, we have Americans have 12 fingers, so that's why we have our system. All right, but make it about 25 inches long, which would be 63.5 centimeters, I think, somewhere in that ballpark. Okay, about that long. Get a screw. Actually, I'm sorry. Make the plank a little bit longer. All right, make it like 27 inches, just to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room. You're going to screw something into the end of it. So from this screw to, you know, those wall hooks where you can like screw it into the wall and hang a picture, and it's a hook. Yeah, it's got a screw, but it's a hook in there. It's easier to use that. So put one at the other end. This length here is a 63.5 or 25 centimeters. Okay. Go down to, here, go down to your local music store, and I'll be right back. Get a guitar string, the third one specifically. All right, starting from E down here, the third one, A. All right, get a guitar string. And string it from here to here. You can attach some either solder or some really strong glue like Gorilla Glue. Super glue tends to kind of crack a little bit, but you can find a strong glue. Attach it to this screw just so that this one's absolutely stable. Wrap it around a few times. Pull it over to this one. Wrap it around a few times here. Glue both sides, but then you see you have a little handle that you can tighten and loosen. Okay, this is your tuning, how you tune things. If this is an A string, I want you, because it'll stretch without snapping, it'll stretch up to C. All right, people do this all the time when they play with alternate tunings on guitar or other stringed instruments. So tighten it up. You'll need a little, there's even apps for it, a tuner. You want a chromatic tuner, okay? I think there's one called Guitar Tuna. I'm not promoting any particular brand, so it doesn't matter. As long as it's chromatic, get a chromatic tuner. And tune this up to the note C. When it says C, that's what you've got. Okay? This is your law of 7. Now, why I say that is because I'm going to give you a couple of places here. If you split it in half, in other words, take like a nail or something, even a guitar pick, and put it at the halfway point and twang it. And read your chromatic tuner, and you'll see that it also says C, but it's an entire octave up, right? It's an entire octave higher. Okay, so this would be octave number 1. This would be octave number 2 in there. And then take a magic marker or a Sharpie, something that doesn't come off easily. Use your chromatic tuner and draw points where each of these makes a note. So you start off with C, find D. In other words, put your little guitar pick on the side of it and keep twanging it until your chromatic tuner says D and E and F and G and A and B. Okay. And then of course the length of it is C. Draw a little dot where each of those are. In fact, you could even probably put a little marker for each of the notes on the piece of wood if you like. Yeah. Okay. See where the notes are. one thing that you will, well, it's absolutely unquestionable. One thing that you will find is that the notes between E and F are much shorter than the distance between the rest of the notes. Same thing with G and or B and C. Okay, B and C of the next octave. Shorter distance. That's where the shocks are. All right, it's undeniable. You just gotta like map it out, do it. Yeah. And if you really want to get creative, we can start to learn the tuning fork principle. Do you have this? Can I erase this?
Yes.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Tuning fork principle. You're going to learn the law of 7 and the tuning fork principle. Get a bit of balsa wood. It's cheap, right? You can get like sheets of it, and you can cut it into. It's very easy to cut with an X-Acto knife or whatever. Do you remember this midway point? How that creates an octave? In other words, it's going to be a higher pitch of the same note, C, on there. Take this measurement, in other words, half the length of the string, half the length of the entire string, and make a box the same size out of balsa wood. You may want to use something different than a 2x4. You might want to use something with a larger base. Stupid camera's not following me. You can use like more of a plank or something with this one, but build a box so high out of balsa wood and attach it to the underside. What you'll notice is that you have, because you are in one half of that wave cycle, that you have resonance at this point in time. Okay, it will amplify the sound, ba, as opposed to bang. Yeah, you're going to get this kind of more amplified sound to it. Build other ones. All right, build one the size of the note A, for example. See the difference between when you have your A resonator attached to it and you hit C, how it's very muted. But then you hit A, it's much louder. All right. Now, what you're learning about is the tuning fork principle, because what's happening here is this. I'll give you a bit of the science behind it, okay? You have a string. It has 2 terminal points in it. When you twang it, it's going to create, that was terrible, wasn't it? It's going to vibrate up and down, okay? If you were to take a slow motion camera, after you twang that, you would see it doing this. Up and down, like that, okay? That would be one wave, like this, and then it vibrates down the other way. By splitting it in half, what you've done is you have created this, all right? So it's exactly twice or half the size, twice the frequency. So now you've got upward wave here and this like this. If you were to split this in half again, you would get the same thing, but smaller. These are called harmonics. All right, now a harmonic just means that it is related to, but not necessarily the same pitch. Like, for example, the lowest C on your string is similar to the higher C. 256 cycles per second versus 512 cycles per second. It's exactly double. It has a harmony. And you can think about, well, it's a harmonic. So, but you can think about this from the standpoint of what we've been saying in terms of as above, so below. Because you're not really walking around with a Mars in you. You're walking around with a harmonic of Mars in you, and Jupiter, a harmonic of Jupiter. And they sound different tones. Okay? So, learn the law of 7 by doing it. And really, if you have no, Guitar Center or someplace like that around you, a rubber band will be fine. You're not going to get as much oomph out of it necessarily, but a rubber band's just fine. Get a rubber band in a shoebox and just, keep tightening the darn thing until you hit C. You can do it that way too. In fact, if you get a shoebox of just the right size, it will be the resonator anyway. And then you take something like this. You ever wonder the funny? Well, and this one's hollow, and I'm doing it so that you can see. But this guitar, you ever wonder about the funny shapes? Oops, of the resonator area, and why they are the way they are. And it's not just because it sits comfortably on your lap. It's because this circle represents half of the width of the strings, you say, or length of the strings. Yeah, this one accommodates the other notes and all over, and so they create these shapes. Same thing with violins. They create these complex shapes of resonators so that somewhere in the body of the stringed instrument, that wave is going to find a resonance and it's going to amplify. That's why guitars and violins and bass and all those sorts of things are not shaped like a box, because they would only respond to one tone. This is how to approach the work, my friends. All right, do it. Do what you know. This is a key phrase in this work. Prove it out to yourself, because otherwise it's just like, oh yeah, the law of 7, right? And you don't know a damn thing about it. This way, you can say, yes, I have heard the law of 7. Yeah, I have tasted the law of 3. I'm not talking about drinking the solution. I'm saying, like, touch the 9-volt battery to your tongue. You've tasted the law of 3 just there. You know what I mean, right? Kids do it. Wow, look at that light's really interfering now, isn't it? Let's see if I can stop this. Okay, good. All right. What do you say? Yeah?
Yeah.
Even if you've done it in school, you haven't done it like an alchemist, right? Because a place like Yamaha, for example, makes guitars and all kinds of things, but a place like Yamaha doesn't necessarily have, someone there with each and every guitar that they make with sandpaper, making sure that, it isn't quite off on the resonance, do they? I mean, high-end guitar manufacturers are going to do that in many cases, but they have a factory and they're learning nothing about the law of 7 in the process. So don't forget to make yourself part of the experiment. Get creative with it. Try different things, right? Be present in the experiment so that you integrate this aspect of the law of 7 into yourself, so that you know it. You don't just learn it. Well, you are it. How's that? That's a better way to say it, isn't it? You've become the law of 7 because you've created something on the principles of the law of 7. You will discover things you didn't know about the law of 7. And, if I, God forbid, get hit by a bus or something like that, you'll at least be able to continue the rest of your life learning about the law of 7 or the law of 3 or these sorts of things. It's about the approach. Okay? Yeah, good. Questions? I can shut my trap for a minute.
You think you haven't been around one? No, I can't think of any questions at the moment. From a physics point of view, though. Physics point of view, physics is happy. Yeah.
Good.
That's good.
I'd hate to piss physics off.
I think Sam was trying to say that the physics in you, because that's what you're studying, does not have any disagreement. No disagreement. Yeah.
Here, do this, right? Get a rope and a friend, or a tree if you don't have any friends like me, right? Tie the rope to your friend or to the tree, or hand them the other end, whatever your scenario is, and find the first harmonic. All right, each of you work in sync.
We were doing this experiment, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Might have been the end of January, I think. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. We had a a length of piano wire and a signal generator, and we
All right.
what we did is we were creating harmonics with the piano wire stretched over a length of wood, and it's been tensioned off with a pulley with some weight so that we can change the tension quite easily.
Well, that is very Pythagorean, isn't it? That was the original way Pythagoras figured this out, wasn't it? But yeah, I mean, like it's everywhere. You see, get a length of rope, find the first harmonic. In other words, when you two can shake it together so that the rope is doing this, and then shake it faster until it's doing this, and shake it faster until it's got, the fourth harmonic, and so on and so forth. It's right there. You can do it. Yeah. Get on a swing set, literally, and start swinging. I know you're all a bit too old for this, aren't you? Yeah, but start swinging on the swing set. Don't break it. Start swinging on the swing set and realize that even if you go higher, you're still traveling at the same harmonic because of the length of chain that holds you there. You see, one is just the amplitude. It's like, do I have a wave like this or do I have a wave like this? It's going to be the same frequency based on the length of chain that you're on. Hopefully you're on chain, not rope. Ion, like I said the other day, sit in the bathtub and just start doing this as the water, so you're sitting in the bathtub, right? And you push the water this way and it kind of goes up against the edge and then it wants to come back. And so you grab it as it's coming back and it goes behind you, hits the edge. Yeah. And eventually what's going to happen is you're going to make a huge mess all over the floor with very little effort, because all you're doing is augmenting the wave. Every time it goes, be in sync with it. Yeah. Whereas do this in the bathtub, you might make a mess, but you're not getting that kind of flow with things. And then apply it to your life. Apply it to being able to detect the frequency, detecting the resonance, having a tuning fork with things and being in harmony with it. A beautiful memory as a child of discovering this principle from the unseen world side of things, the electrics. I was on a walk, and don't even recall where I was going, probably the library, but I was on a walk and I noticed something, that as I was walking, if I walked a little bit slower, I could kind of feel this pressure from my back, like it wasn't in harmony with it. If I walked too fast, I felt like a pressure from my front where I wasn't in harmony with it. And I played around with this idea of walking according to the nature of the land. Each land will have a particular frequency about it. And I know, Hannah, you leave mark in the dust, right? You walk fast and can't keep up and doesn't want to keep up anymore. Yeah.
It breaks the laws of physics in that you're quite a bit shorter, but you can still move faster.
Well, the resonant frequency, right, of her legs is different. Yeah, there's a resonance there. But no, what I'm saying is bring it into your life, please. Okay, look for it in nature. Once you build one of these sorts of things, you'll start to see it everywhere. And Ion, I know you've got 15 binders full of examples of the laws, right? But this is another way to integrate it into yourself.
Right.
Another way to do it. Become a part of it, or let it become a part of you. And so much magic opens up when you do.
Was that you saying, mate? You were saying something and then you stopped. I was going to say, think about small animals, short legs, move quickly. Ah, yes.
Yeah, right. It's the resonant frequency.
Any jokes?
There's nothing like holding hands with somebody that you don't have frequency with. It's just like, trying to walk and like they're going at one pace and you're going at the other. Yeah, that's just like, I love you, but don't touch me when we're walking. Bucks against things. What is it? It's Anyone know that formula? Sam, do you know it?
Can you
X
see
sub,
it?
X sub c equals 1 over 2 pi fc.
Do you want to get closer? No.
Can you see it? My head's in the way.
No, it's just because of that chalk that's affecting
Yeah.
the contrast.
X sub c equals 1 over, or the reciprocal of 2 pi fc. Anyway, doesn't matter. But it does matter
I'll
because it's the electronics formula for resonance in electrical engineering. And so they can figure out, if they have the right inductor and capacitor, what resonant frequency it's going to go at.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, it's the same though. You can be putting a circuit together, or you can be in the bathtub, and you could still get there because it's the same thing. It's no
Yeah.
different. Yeah. Okay. Good.
You
All
can
right.
do that experiment here. Not at home.
What the hell are you doing? Yeah. Don't grow out of experimentation, okay?
Yeah.
It'll get you so far in life. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's call it, unless you have questions or comments or concerns. Actually, I have someone to deal with concerns. Like if you have complaints, I hired somebody. Her name is Helen Waite. So if you have any complaints, please go to Helen Waite. Helen Waite.
Oh, right, yeah. I get it. Yeah. Well, I can't help it. Yeah, because I knew somebody called Helen. So my goes, Helen.
New hire for the Eminent Way, okay?
Yeah, right.
Have a great rest of your weekend. See you all soon.